So the next topic which will start is sudo. So when we start the installation or when we complete the installation, during the installation, we are asked to provide a username. Okay, that username is always provided the sudo access. Okay, by default, the user which we will create at the time of installation, in this case Prayag, it has all the access to the system, and admin user in Linux is root. Okay, but login via console is disabled. Well, login via console means this is the console. If I try to log in via root, I will not be able to do that, because even at the time of installation it didn't ask us to set the password. But this is not the case with every OS. Some of the Red Hat or CentOS based or Fedora based OS, they allow to set the root password, but Ubuntu doesn't allow. But we can become a root using sudo su hyphen. Okay, I have become a root. Now I can set the password, but still from outside when we try to do SSH, and if we try to log in from the console, it won't allow it. Okay, as a security measure, it is disabled. We can enable it using some changes, but it is not recommended. So the only user which has whole rights is the Prayag user. And what is the difference between a normal user? I mean, how to differentiate a normal user and a root user? Root user will have a hash prompt, one of the way to find out, and other normal user will always have a dollar prompt.
Yeah,
Root
sorry to
user,
interrupt.
yeah,
So the root cannot be used to log in from outside, is it?
yes.
So how that Red Hat can allow root to log in outside?
Yes, Red Hat used to allow, but now in the latest version it is not allowed.
Oh,
Even if you see somewhere you are able to do that, they have enabled it, but by default it is not enabled and it is not recommended.
but by rights cannot enable, but practically can enable, right?
Yes, particularly I can enable. We
Oh,
can enable.
so that will be a security breach.
Yeah, that will be a security breach.
Okay, got it.
So if you go to /etc ssh, it is not part of this course, but this SSSD here, if you see grep-i permit, okay, okay, permit root login, okay, by default prohibited. We'll have to what we'll have to uncomment it and say yes and restart SSSD, then it will allow root, even root login. Okay, but by default it is not allowed. So if I do ID, anything up below 1000 is a norm, above 1000 is a normal user, and anything below 1000 is a system user, and none of the system users are allowed the access. If you see cat/etc passwd, they have a shell called no login, okay, or a false, anything below 1000, and root user will always have a UID and GID 00. And suppose if you provide UID and GID, means if you add your user to the root group, then you can also become a root, but that is also not recommended. It is recommended to use only sudo. So let's try to run a high privileged command, that is vi sudo. Using vi sudo, we can add users to sudoers, that is super users. Okay, it says permission denied. Even though Prayag is added at the time of installation in a sudoers, it can run the root level commands only when you prefix sudo to it. Okay, now I can run it. I'll remove it. It's not required. So other system level command, we can check /etc shadow file. Okay, this is also not allowed. Okay, and for cat sudo doesn't work sometime. For this it worked, but most of the times it may not work. It depends upon the permission. So sudo is very powerful and we have to use it cautiously while giving the access to the end user. So if I do sudo cat slash etc sudoers, okay, I can see it. But if I do directly cat slash sudoers, it will say permission denied. So let's create one user now. User add -m to create a home directory, -s to create a bash shell for that user, and the user will be John. Again, I cannot run the root level command, so I'll add sudo to it, and now I'm able to create a John user. To see what are the users which we have and the one which we have created now, just check using pass.wd file. In pass.wd file, you can see we have created a John user. Similarly, to see what are the groups we have, we can use the command /etc group. So I have created Prayag. Whenever we create a user, a group will also be created, and this John and Prayag are users and group both. Now uh, let's log in via John user, but before that let's set the password. Using passwd command, I can set the password. For John user, the password is John. Okay, now let's try to log in using John user. Okay, I'm logged in, and I'll do via sudo. I'll try to add one more user to sudoers. It says permission denied. Now if I do sudo and I'll add the user's password, still it will not allow. Why? Because John is not in the sudoers file. Okay, and it is giving us a warning that you're trying to breach. Okay, so we'll have to add user John to sudo so that it can run the sudo level commands. So let's add that user sudo via sudo, and just add that user John, all permissions. So we don't need to remember everything, it's already given above. We just need to copy as it is, just save it. Okay, now if I try to do sudo via sudo, I'll enter the John user's password and I can access that file as well now. So this is how we add any user to the sudoers file. Now let's see one more option. Let's create one more user.
So this is a method to give root access to user, right?
Yes, yes,
The only place to give user to add here.
yes, correct.
Suppose we have 10 users to add one group, then group also can
Yeah,
assign.
that I'm explaining next.
Okay.
So now we are adding a user called James. Okay, let's set the password for user. Okay, and let's add the user to sudoers as well. We'll add a user to sudoers, but with a difference. Here we are saying don't ask for the password. Okay, let's do it with the password first. Okay, then we'll see the difference. Okay, I've added a James user to. Okay, so let me cross check it. Sudoers. I can directly edit this file, okay, but it is not recommended to edit the file. It is recommended to add a user using sudo via sudo only. Uh, so entry is done properly. Now sudo. pass wd James. Now let's log in as James. I'll open one more terminal. Now let's do sudo vi sudo. Okay, so if you see, it is asking me for this password. Suppose we do not want that the user should ask for this password, we'll have to add no passwd in this file. Okay, so just okay. Now what I have done is I'm saying that don't ask for the password. Now if I do sudo vi sudo, it will directly open the file. Okay, so most of the times, okay, if you are managing the VM, you are the owner of that VM. Okay, and then you can assign that permission to yourself, that is no passwd, don't ask for the password. Okay, and if you see here, there is a percentage sign before sudo. So anything which starts with the percent is a group. So what here it is written properly, that allow members of the group sudo to execute any command. Okay, so the members of sudo group, this sudo group is created at the time of installation. It is you can see that in /etc group grep sudo. Okay, so if you see, my user is in sudo's group, that's why I'm able to run any sudo level of any sudo commands. This was done at the time of installation. So if we add, let's create one more user, sudo user add alice. Okay, and shell will be bin bash, and let's create its home directory. Okay, and using user mod, I can also add here with in user add itself, but I forgot. I can add this option -g alice. It should be added to the sudoers group. Okay, let's set the password for alice. Okay, now I'll try to log in as alice user. Okay, and just do sudo su, not sudo, vi sudo will do. Okay, and if you see, the ls user is also able to run any high privileged command. Okay, and instead of giving this all permission, okay, we can also give some limited number of access. So limited means only it can run some particular command. Here all means all the commands it can run to execute any command. Okay, but we can also restrict it to like /bin. It can act only. Okay, let me first check what is the location for user add. Okay, so if I add instead of all, if I add here user has been user add, okay, it will be able, James will be able to only run user add command, not any other commands. Okay, but we rarely will follow such segregation because it is very hard to manage. Okay, and most of the times we'll be giving all permissions. And even no pass wd is a higher privileged command because after becoming a root, it can do anything. Okay, so it depends upon the policies of the organization, how they set the sudoers. But remember, instead of all, we can also set a particular command or a set of commands. So that was all about sudoers. If you have any